Lars Larson Show and follow on Twitter at Lars Larson Show. And the guy you find over at W Week is Aaron Mesh, reporter for Willamette Week. Aaron, good to have you on the program.
Good to be here, Lars.
You know, I've had this debate, before we get solidly into your story, I've had this debate with people where they say, well, you know, so-and-so's not a journalist, he's just a blogger. And I said, you know, I think we've got to have a new definition of journalist. I work for an institution, so do you. But for the people who are simply being what journalists were, you know, 500 years ago, where they wrote words down, I think bloggers are every bit as much journalists as the folks who work for big institutions like the Fish Wrapper or for Willamette Week. And so what we've got in this case...
Which we like to call the other fish wrapper.
The other fish wrapper. Well, you know, you guys print on dead trees, and your carbon footprint is a lot bigger than mine. I just use electrons. But we'll put that aside for the moment. Tell me about this guy who's been blogging and a thorn in the side of TriMet, and then TriMet decided to retaliate against him by sending a squad of cops to his place of work and arresting him for making phone calls to a public agency?
That's what we're talking about. The guy's name is Lane Jensen, and in many ways, Lars, he does, in fact, remind you of a throwback to the old days of the Jeffersonian newsletters. He writes a blog called Portland Transit Lane, and that blog is scathing. It exposes stories about TriMet, particularly about executive management that they don't want done, but it also spends a lot of time berating TriMet and calling them liars and making very strong, opinionated, and sometimes obscene statements about management.
That's all covered by the First Amendment, though, right?
Sure, and more than covered. It's the point of the First Amendment, really. Meanwhile, he has started this summer sending text messages to TriMet managers and spokespeople, repeatedly asking them questions. He used an automatic text send program, SMS scheduler, to send the same question every 5 minutes to some spokespeople and managers. And the question that he sent this month was, when will TriMet increase security on its buses, and how many people have to die before TriMet increases security? This was after a shooting at a Mac station. He sent this question over and over and over again to several managers, and he also sent it to the agency spokeswoman, Roberta Allstott, who then filed criminal charges against him.
Now explain to people
what's called telephonic harassment.
There you go. That's what I was wondering about, because look, I've seen legitimate cases of telephonic harassment, but usually they're between boyfriends and girlfriends or stalkers and people like that. My family's even been subject to it. But in this case, does the same law apply when a guy can't get an answer out of a public agency and decides I'm going to keep beleaguering them with calls till they tell me the answer?
That's the really interesting question this story raises, I think, is that I think legally he's in trouble here. And he's in trouble here because he was told by her and admits that he was told by her to stop texting her. And so once someone has said verbally or in writing, don't contact me again, and someone else continues to contact them, they are very likely engaging in telephonic harassment. Although, quite frankly, usually that charge, you're right, is reserved for ex-boyfriends who are stalking their breakups. It's not reserved for journalists or gadflies, if you want to use a less polite term. You know, I mean, if you want to call the guy a gadfly or an irritant, that's probably very true.
Well, but Aaron, here's where I kind of take this personally. I have a ton of agencies that will not answer my questions, will not answer my calls, because they don't like the questions I'm asking. Now, I avoid profanity. I avoid any kinds of threats, but I will call agencies over and over, and I get no answer. And the danger I could see is that any of these agencies could say, we're going to tell the cops that we have told Lars never to call us again, which I don't think they have a right as a public agency to do, and then I call one more time, and presumably the cops show up at the studio to put me in handcuffs and haul me away.
Well, again, I agree that this has a chilling effect that is very disconcerting. One piece of advice would be that you shouldn't do what Lane Jensen did. You shouldn't use the personal cell phones of the people who work for that agency.
But let me ask you about that. You mentioned that in your story, but what I didn't get from the story, and this is Aaron Mesh from Willamette, you can find them online at wweek.com. So if those public agency folks, like a lot of the Obama folks, are using their personal cell phones for a work function, how did this guy get a hold of the personal cell phone of one of the spokespeople at TriMet?
He got them because they're using them for work functions. They were listed on the emergency contact list for TriMet.
So,
which was inside an internal document the agency uses to say, like, if there's an emergency, you can reach this person.
Which, by the way, is a public record, right?
It probably is. I would imagine, based on how TriMet tends to handle public records, they would try to deny access to it.
So is it defensible?
Is
it defensible if somebody at a local agency decides to use his or her own personal cell phone for a public business and to have the number published in public documents? Then is it not kosher to call the phone?
That's a really good question. You know what another good question is?
What's that?
Whether or not being a jerk is protected inside the First Amendment.
I think it is, isn't it? I'm a jerk most days of the week, or at least some people would. Ask Blue Oregon. They'd say I'm a jerk every day of the week. I'd be in jail for the rest of my life.
Yep.
So
I hear what you're saying, and I think there's a real serious question. I mean, you talk about calling people repeatedly and asking the same question repeatedly. It's an established technique in certain kinds of reporting that it's not one that I tend to use, but certainly, like, you look at the Jeff Kogan scandal, and there were 3 TV stations that staged question and answer periods during Kogan's county commission meetings, where they sat there and they asked Kogan questions repeatedly that he refused to answer. And yeah, were those staged events that were essentially publicity mongering? Yeah, they were, but they also were pushing Kogan out of office.
And they were pushing for an answer, and if he had provided the answer, then they would have gone away, presumably. But in this case, if you can use laws like telephonic harassment or, say, stalking laws to say, hey, there are these reporters that keep showing up in front of my house and in front of my office, and whether you're the head of a big corporation or a public official, I think that's a legitimate tactic as long as they don't assault you.
One of the things that's even spookier about this case to me is that the transit police, and these were, by the way, cops who are contracted to work for TriMet, the transit police not only arrested him, and not only does he face up to 15 years in jail, but they confiscated his cell phone and his laptop.
Is that legal?
Which are the tools of his trade.
Yeah.
Like, so here's a guy who no longer has access to the information he's using to do whatever level of reporting he does. And the agency that he's reporting on now has in their possession the items he used to do that reporting.
And we don't know what they're doing with them, and he's been banned from future TriMet board meetings. You can read the whole story at WWeek.com. The reporter is Aaron Mesh, and Aaron, we're always glad to have you on the show.
It's always a pleasure to be here, Lars.
Thank you very much, Aaron.